I'm the Vice President here at Multicopter Warehouse. I'm in charge of the enterprise sales team and like to welcome you to the introduction to the Matrice 300 RTK. I would imagine some of you have already watched the videos on it and kind of have a feel for what it is so far, but really it's the next evolution in the Matrice series and has a lot of really neat features that we're going to go over today. There's a picture of it there. You can see the Matrice 300 RTK, the new Zenmuse H20 camera, and the new controller, which is very similar to the smart controller, but has a few changes that we'll go over as we get things running here. If you're familiar with the DJI products, you know, we started back in 2015 with the Matrice 100, the XT, and then the Z30 camera. The M600 Pro came out shortly after that. And in 2017, the first versions of the Matrice 200 series came out. So that's been a while, almost 3 years of the Matrice 200 platform being available. Now it's 2020 and we've got a new guy, which is kind of interesting. And we also have the P4 multispectral and the P4 RTK. Those are extremely popular products in their niches. P4 RTK, fantastic for mapping. P4 multispectral for agricultural work. Wow, questions already. Does the M300 tag images with RTK data? Is the RTK data only used for navigation, like in the M210 RTK? That's a great question. I believe it's supposed to tag the images. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to actually get a follow-up on that one and double check on that for you. Let's see. There we go. DJI definitely has set the standards. There's not a lot that competes out there with the geofencing, altitude limitations, flight distance warnings, the aeroscope remote ID system that's out there, AirSense, which has been included on the Matrice 200 series, and obstacle sensing, and we'll see what's all new with the obstacle sensing on the 300 series. And we now have some really good product security with password protection, US-based Amazon Web Services server, local data mode, flight hub, and AES 256-bit encryption. So there's a lot of product security built into the platform, which is very nice. Unfortunately, this doesn't alleviate all the concerns out there that some people have with DJI products, but the fact remains that multiple cybersecurity firms have analyzed the data from the DJI products, and there's never been anything shown that says that there's any security threat whatsoever. So that's just kind of what it is.
Every day, good people fight fire, save lives, and keep our world revolving, even in the toughest conditions. In times like these, nothing is more critical than being able to trust your team and your tools. Meet the new Matrice 300 RTK and Zenmuse H20 series. Together, they form the foundation for reinventing the world of work. The Matrice 300 RTK boasts a 55-minute flight time, 15-kilometer transmission range, improved reliability, superior flight performance, and powerful intelligent functions. For the first time ever, dual vision and TOF sensors appear on all 6 sides of the aircraft, providing the Matrice 300 RTK with the ultimate positioning and obstacle avoidance capabilities. Flight, navigation, and obstacle data are presented in the new primary flight display. This provides unprecedented situational awareness. A powerful flying platform requires an equally capable payload. By combining a wide-angle camera, 23 times optical zoom camera, thermal camera, and a laser rangefinder, the Zenmuse H20 series is the optimal match for the Matrice 300 RTK. The new UI lets you quickly scan an area with a wide-angle or thermal camera, preview a subject of interest, and then zoom in to confirm critical details, all with just 2 taps. Combining the intelligence of the Matrice 300 RTK and the versatility of the Zenmuse H20 series yields unprecedented productivity for your field operations. Minimize repetitive work by automating routine missions with AI Spot Check. You can mark objects of interest after a demo flight. Then the aircraft will replicate the position, angle, and framing automatically for future missions. Save time and get highly detailed imagery of a large area through high-res grid photos. Select an area of interest, then capture a set of photos with a long-range zoom camera, all with a single tap. In coordinated missions, it is essential yet challenging to synchronize aerial intelligence with ground and command teams. Use the pinpoint function to mark the subject of interest and instantly share the precise location data to your second operator or ground teams via DJI Flight Hub. With Smart Track, you can now automatically detect and track a moving object, even at extreme distances, while synchronizing the subject's dynamic location in real time. The advanced dual operator mode lets each operator obtain control of the aircraft or payload with a single tap. This creates new possibilities for mission strategies during operations. Efficiency doesn't stop with just software. Downtime is minimized by a hot swappable battery system that keeps power flowing without the need to reboot the aircraft. A new quick charging battery station allows for rapid recharging of 4 groups of flight and controller batteries, so you can keep operations going for as long as you need. If that's not enough, the Matrice 300 RTK platform supports up to 3 payloads simultaneously and 2.7 kilograms of total payload weight. Compatibility with DJI's developer tools means you'll have access to a variety of industry-specific solutions in the months and years to come. In a world that demands more, we've reimagined what it means for tools to be tough, reliable, and intelligent. The Matrice 300 RTK and Zenmuse H20 series, rewriting the standard for industrial UAV solutions.
Well, there you have it. Why am I getting an echo? I'll kill my audio there. All right. What do you think about that? That is, as Michael put it, very intense. It's definitely a new machine. There's a little family resemblance to the Matrice 200, but definitely from the ground up, a new machine. And when I first saw these pictures, I thought somebody had photoshopped a 200 and just flipped everything upside down, because it's definitely a different look and feel to the design. So let's see, I got a few questions here. Do the propellers show when video in an area? The cameras hang down pretty good. So unless you're pointing the camera up, you're not going to see the props. It's definitely an interesting design having the props on the bottom. It does make for a better configuration of the antennas. Moving those antennas out further, and in this shot, you can see the antennas on the RTK antennas on the back, and getting those further away is an improvement in as well, where on the 200, the RTK antennas were very close together. Getting those spread out more will improve the effectiveness of the RTK system. So pretty cool design, definitely different in having those props underneath, but it does allow better clearance of those antennas, which is pretty cool. It also means with when you have the top-mounted camera, they're not interfering with that. The main reason, though, is those sensors that you can see on the top. If the props were on top, they would interfere with the obstacle avoidance. So having the props lower and the sensors higher definitely means the sensors can work a lot better. You guys saying my audio is very low? Lost audio. Okay, my audio is fine. Okay, great. So I'll put this out there so you guys can see this video as well. Probably just didn't pick up the audio from the video very well. Will the Z30 or XT2 camera work on the Matrice 300? We will go into payloads in a little bit, but the short answer is yes. The Z30 and XT2 will work. Can multiple hand controllers be used to allow extended distance missions such as rail power line inspection, leapfrogging? Yes, that is the, we will get into that as well, but yes, you can hand off from one controller to another as long as they were both bound at the beginning. So very cool there. What is the cost of the aircraft and sensor options? We'll talk about some of that. Okay. When operating with two operators, is there a full-time POV camera for the pilot? Yes, there is a FPV camera. Looking at this picture, it is the large lens on the front of the aircraft. It's a nice wide-angle lens. Okay, that takes care of most of the questions there. So we'll kind of keep rolling here. The 300 RTK and H20 series offers superior performance, safety and reliability, advanced intelligence, and extensibility and openness. And we'll talk about each of these things as we get going. So we'll start off with the performance aspect of the 300 RTK. Now, you're going to hear me say that a lot. The 300 RTK, there's only one model. Unlike the 200, where we had the 200, the 210, and the 210 RTK, there is only the 300 RTK. It's one aircraft. So let's get into some of these really good specs here. Enhanced flight time, 55 minutes of max flight time. Of course, that'd be without a payload. Mission durations typically increased by 140%. But what about effective flight time? You get the 210 RTK V2 loaded with an XT2 and a Z30, really gives you realistic flight times of about 15 minutes. The 300 RTK with the H20T, which is the quad payload camera, that's a wide angle, the 23 times zoom camera, the laser rangefinder, and the thermal camera, is going to give you about 36 minutes in the air. So drastically increased flight times. Very impressive on the flight times here. Mike saying he's used the 210 to suspend payload below the drone attached to each of the four arms. Looks like this may not be possible with this design. Yeah, that would be correct. If you put something attached to the arms, it's going to get cut off. So as soon as we get ours in here, which should be in the next couple days, we're going to be looking at payload connectivity options and seeing what we can do on that front to attach payloads. Okay, little comparison here between the 200 and the 300. Again, the flight times, about 36 minutes with the H20T versus the 200 series, getting about 15 minutes with the full payload. Maximum range on the 200 was about 5 miles. On the 300, we're looking at 9.3 miles. Video transmission was 1080p on both. Whoops, got off the slide there. Max payload went from 4 pounds to 6 pounds. Maximum number of gimbals attached at one time went from 2 to 3. So before you could only have, a camera and your FPV, or 2 cameras. You couldn't have the dual camera plus FPV, or dual camera plus the one on top. Well, now we have 3 video feeds. So a lot more flexibility when it comes to different gimbal configurations you can put on there. On the obstacle sensing, we went from having front only to all 6 sides. That is forward, back, left, right, up, and down. So a lot more obstacle sensing on the Matrice 300, making it a much safer machine. The Ingress Protection increased slightly from IP43 to IP45, and I believe it's IP44 on the cameras. And 3 prop emergency landing. This is a tech that's been around for quite a while. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about that, Barry. So years ago, we saw videos of this tech being used, where if you lost a prop, a motor, or an ESC, something like that, where you lost one of the 4 motors, the system goes into basically a high-speed spin, and it is still completely controllable. You can fly it back and land in this mode. Now, granted, it's spinning when it hits the ground, so it's still probably likely that you may break a leg or something like that when it lands, but you're probably going to save your payload, and you will definitely save, the aircraft from significant damage if you lost a prop. On the 200, if you lose one of the motors, prop, or ESC, it's a total loss. You're going to lose everything. But with the 300, that emergency landing will bring it down in much more of a controlled descent. Really not much different than putting a parachute on it. Parachute's not going to completely protect an aircraft falling out of the sky. It's really only intended to not kill somebody if it hits them. On a parachute landing, you're very often taking landing gear damage. So this is definitely a big improvement over that. Can you display simultaneously all 3 video images on a single hand controller? I actually have not seen a demonstration of that yet. So as soon as we get ours in, we're going to be looking at that. What is the sensor size of the largest format RGB still camera on the H20? How does it compare to the X5S and X7 cameras? The X5, okay. So we'll talk about the cameras. Let me get there, Kirk. FPV cameras improved. It's now a 1080p camera. And in terms of generating waypoints, we went from 99 waypoints on the Matrice 200 to 65,535 waypoints on the Matrice 300. And as the questions are coming in, yes, let's talk about the payloads. So on the 200, we had the XT, well, no, there still was the X4S, but that's discontinued. We had the XT, the XT2, Z30, X5S, and X7. And on Matrice 300, we have the XT2, Z30, H20, and H20T. So what the big difference here in terms of camera compatibility is that the Matrice 300 does not have an internal image processor. So it only can use cameras that have their own image processor. So if the camera itself has an SD card, that's kind of how this works. So the XT2, the Z30, H20, and H20T all have their own onboard image processing and storage, where the X5S and X7 did not, which is why those cameras are not compatible with the 300. Okay, with the laser rangefinder, can the M300 be made terrain aware? So the short answer to that is no, at least not the way it's implemented today. However, there is going to be a millimeter wave radar system coming out for the 300 RTK, which will give you that terrain awareness. It's very similar to what is available on the latest Ingress model. So it can do terrain following based on millimeter wave radar. So that's kind of exciting. I don't have a date on that yet, so I can't tell you when that will be coming. I just know that that is definitely in the pipeline. So battery charger. Well, if you're used to the 200, which according to the poll, most of you were not, the vast majority of you do not have 200s, but it came with a quad charging hub, which would only charge 2 batteries at a time. So if you wanted to be charging more and you needed like nonstop continuous flight, you had to have a bank of charging stations, or go with something like the Colorado Drone Chargers charging station, which could do 4 at a time. Well, the 300 is going to come with this charging suitcase here. So all-in-one charging and storage. It can do 8 of the TB60 batteries and 4 of the WB37s, which are the ones that are used in the Crystal Sky displays and the smart remote that comes with this. So a little more on that later. Charge 2 batteries to full capacity within 60 minutes. So you actually can do continuous flight with this thing by shoving the batteries in it. Another cool thing is it will do the firmware management of the batteries. So what you would do is you would plug in the remote control to the battery charging station, and you can upgrade all the firmware on all your batteries in one shot without having to plug each one into the aircraft and update it, or you get on site and you plug the batteries in, it's like, oh, firmware mismatch. So you have to wait for the batteries to do their upgrade. You can do them all in one shot with the battery charger. Let's see. Any multispectral cameras like Red Edge equivalent for crop monitoring? Yes, the slant range is compatible. So that's the first one I know of. There will probably be more, but for right now, I know that slant range is on the list here. Whoops, lost my mouse. Will the XT camera work on the 300? No, the XT did not have its own image processor, so that will not work on it. LiDAR, there has not been an announced LiDAR system yet, so I would hope to see one at some point, but right now there is not one available. Will the 3-prop emergency landing system and other features help support beyond visual line of sight certification? That is going to be up to the FAA. I sure hope so. As you increase your safety and you can explain more of your risk mitigation, that is going to help with waivers, but we'll have to see if that makes much of a difference. Gary seems excited about the hot swappable batteries. While we've had hot swappable batteries since the Inspire 2, I mean, I had to make a tool to be able to hot swap the Inspire 2 batteries, and the M200, well, that was just kind of a joke. So this actually looks a lot better. I see the batteries for this are above the FAA limit for onboard transport. Yeah, I mean, so were the TB55s. So that was a problem with people who need to travel. Like those, the TB60s would have to be shipped somewhere, like UPS, if you needed to take them somewhere. This is definitely an issue if you are emergency management or something and you need to grab your stuff and go on the spur of the moment. That's going to be a problem with these batteries. So there's not a whole lot that can be done about that. How heavy is the charger station with the batteries? Sorry, Trevor, I would have to do the math on that. I have the specs handy somewhere. Follow up with me. I can let you know on that one. I just don't have that data off the top of my head. Jeremy, sorry, did you say the battery station is included? Yes, the battery station is included. Now, you can order an M300 RTK without that for less price, but then you have no way of charging the batteries. This is the only charging option for the system. So I would not recommend ordering it without the base station or without the battery station, because there'd be no way of charging the batteries. So if you order from us, the quote that you would get would include the battery station. Very interested in the 3-prop thing for flights over people. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to have a difference. Does it have detect and avoid radar? So there's no radar. It does have ADS-B in, so you can see other manned aircraft in your area, but it doesn't have avoidance of aircraft. So it doesn't have a radar system, it just uses ADS-B in. Do you get 8 batteries? No, well, of course, I'll quote you as many batteries as you want, but the base system is going to come with 1 set of batteries. Okay, let's get going here. OcuSync Enterprise is the new transmission system, 9.3 mile maximum transmission range in FCC mode with 1080p HD image transmission and the triple video channel support. So first questions we got is, oh, is this OcuSync 2.0? And it's like, no, it's OcuSync Enterprise. So it's definitely an improvement over OcuSync with the additional capabilities. Mike, is there a roving base station that supports RTK capability? Yes. So the standard DRTK2 base station that's available, that comes with the P4 RTK or the 210 RTK, it's the same base station that is compatible with the Matrice 300 RTK. So not everybody is going to need the RTK capability. It's already built into the aircraft. It just kind of makes sense to only have 1 aircraft with the cost of adding the system being relatively low. You can use, right out of the box, you can use an N-trip network. So you could use, well, there's just N-trip networks. There's TopNet's, Topcon's TopNet, Trimble VRS. There's also existing base stations out there like the Trimble R10, for example, that can act as an N-trip server. And those will all work right out of the box. But you can, if you don't have any of those, you can definitely get the DJI DRTK2 base station to go along with it. Increased maximum takeoff weight is now 19.8 pounds, which means it has a payload capacity of up to 6 pounds. So that is pretty darn good. It's not M600 territory, but it's definitely a big step up. And the fact that you could have more gimbal or more payload configurations now can be a plus for people. I don't know how many are going to fly 2 cameras on the bottom and a camera on top at the same time, but it's definitely a possibility. But having the dual gimbal is probably going to be fairly popular, although with the H20 camera, we don't need to have a zoom camera on one side and the thermal camera on the other because it's all built in to the H20T. So less need to add the different cameras. So before, you'd have to have the Z30 and the XT2. Well, now you can do the combination of those two with the H20T. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's talk about the H20 series for a moment. There's 2 models of the H20. There's the H20 and the H20T. Both of them have the wide angle, the zoom camera, and the laser rangefinder. The T stands for thermal. So the H20T has the thermal camera. You have a 20 megapixel camera, gives you an effective focal length of about 31 to 556 millimeters, featuring night scene or IR cut, which was also available on the Z30. The radiometric thermal camera is 640 by 512 at 30 frames per second, and that is a true radiometric camera. It stores the files as radiometric JPEGs, so they can be processed with standard tools that can work with those files. Laser rangefinder has a detection range. I believe the short end was like 3 meters all the way out to 1,200 meters. And we'll talk more about how you can use that down the road. The wide angle camera is a 12 megapixel, 24 millimeter lens. So that's fixed. And we'll see some more examples of stuff and how these things work together. What does night scene do? So night scene It's also called IR cut. So it's a kind of a filter that blocks out infrared, making it easier to see things in low light. So it's not night vision per se. It just helps in low light situations. Is there optional thermal lens focal length? No, it is 13 millimeter. So there's one lens for the radiometric today. I don't know if there will be other ones, but right now it's one lens. Are there other higher megapixel cameras planned that will be suitable for photogrammetry surveys? So the short answer to that is yes. My understanding is that there will be other payloads coming, maybe from DJI, maybe from third parties, but there are cameras in the works designed for specifically for photogrammetry. All right, the new UI, as we see here, is kind of interesting. It is more akin to, God, where'd my mouse go? It's more akin to flying an airplane heads-up display. There's similarities to the existing Go app and Pilot app, but there's, I think they tried to make it a little bit more aircraft-ish, I would say. So let's take a look at how this works here. So a little bit different display. If you're familiar with the Go app or the Pilot app, it's going to feel pretty familiar. The main difference is on the bottom where we see the obstacle avoidance and our altitude, our speed, and some additional information there. Should be beneficial for some people. I'll just kind of play through that again there. In some spots, you can see so you can see it's zoomed, or he's selected that ship out in the distance, allows you to just zoom right into it, switch to thermal, and there's the zoomed version of that shot. It just takes a couple taps to get zoomed in on something. Very easy to work with. Let's see. Can you use a 10 or 12-inch iPad for display? No, it uses this new smart controller. So we'll get in, I believe I have a slide that talks about that, but you know, this thing is brand new. It was only announced 2 days ago. So there are some details that are still a little fuzzy, but there was mention in our initial training, which wasn't much more than this, that you can use a tablet as a second display, but that's only for Android. Now, I don't know why. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but apparently you can connect a second display as long as it's an Android device, but not iOS. And I don't know if that's subject to change or what's going on with that, but we'll have to, again, see kind of what's going on with that. Can you adjust zoom rate to record zoom transition? I don't know that there's a setting in there yet. I haven't got my unit here yet. I'm still waiting on it. Should be here in the next few days, and I'll be able to get more of the in-depth on how the things work as soon as I get some airtime on it. Can you trigger multiple cameras on the H20T at the same time? Yes, they are all triggered at the same time. So whatever cameras you have plugged in, if you hit record or you take a picture, they all fire simultaneously. All right, we'll get into some of the safety and reliability features. 6 directional sensing and positioning. Very cool. Definitely was looking at this as one of the key features that we were going to see on new machines, and they definitely delivered on this. They've got all 6 sides, forward, back, left, right, up, down, and up to 131-foot maximum detection range, and they can work up to a speed of 38 miles an hour. So extremely good obstacle avoidance and detection range. You can customize the aircraft sensing behavior. If you need to fly closer to something, you can tune that down. So make it however, sensitive, or set the distance however you want. Like the 210 version 2, it has anti-collision beacons on the top and bottom, and there are also top and bottom auxiliary lights. So that's new. We had auxiliary lights on the bottom of the Matrice, on the Mavic 2 Enterprise series, that you could turn on an LED on the bottom, which was great when you were coming in to land at night. So that was kind of cool. And now we have a top-mounted auxiliary light as well, which, I guess if you were doing bridges or something and you needed to make sure that the top was lit, I'm not exactly sure how often I would use a top-mounted auxiliary light when there's a beacon on top, but it's there. So, it's the cost of an LED, so not that big of a deal. Ingress protection has been improved a little bit, and from IP43 to IP45 on the aircraft itself. So it can take splashing water on it, definitely light rain, things like that. And the cameras actually are IP44. So they're very good in terms of getting water on them as well. Now, if you've ever flown an aircraft in the rain, kind of in my opinion anyway, the least of your concerns is the water on the aircraft. If it's got a rating like this, that's fine. It can fly in it, but 1 or 2 drops of water on the lens, and well, now your camera is pretty much toast. You won't be able to see anything unless you come and wipe that off. So yes, these things can fly in the rain. The cameras are waterproof to a certain extent, but there's no wiper blade on the camera. So if you get water on the camera lens, well, that's kind of a problem. The ESCs are located in the body. They used to be in the right underneath the motors. So a little more reliable of a design, as well as if it comes to a repair, it's easier to repair and should be less costly. External airflow has been improved. That's kind of cool. And the drone can withstand rain of 100 millimeters over 24 hours, which is a laboratory test condition. Saw a video of that. Just looks like rain. So 100 millimeters is 4 inches. So if you're expecting, that kind of, put that in perspective, 4 inches of water over 24 hours, that's quite a bit of rain that it can handle. Included is a new UAV health management system that will show you the health monitoring and flight data management. So you can see a lot more about what an issue is, or a potential issue, right up front, versus when we would start up other machines, you just get the little bar at the top that says there's a problem, and some of it is okay, but it doesn't really give you a lot of in-depth. This new health management system is supposed to go quite a bit further and includes all the standard stuff, your flight data management, flight log management, your firmware management, and it records any errors and has troubleshooting guidelines. So should help to keep your machine safer. But this is a good close-up view of the new Smart Controller Enterprise. Now, a few things you'll notice compared to the regular Smart Controller is it has these little tabs on the side for hooking a lanyard to it. It has dust covers over the joysticks, making them a little bit more secure outdoors. And it features not only the internal battery, like the regular Smart Controller, but it also can take the WB37 batteries, which are the same as the Crystal Sky, and they're also the same as the DRTK2 base station. So if you're already having that, if you're getting the base station, it's the same batteries. So you don't have to worry about your battery and your remote going dead while you're flying. Just swap in a new battery and you're good to go. Alan, does it output HDMI to a remote monitor? Yes, there is a HDMI output on the controller. Okay. Moving on here, multi-sensor redundancy. So this has been improved on the 300 as well. We got dual IMUs, dual barometers, dual compasses, dual RTK antennas, and GNSS modules. So a little bit more on the redundancy side, which is always good, less likely to have any issues there. That looks the same management screen they have in the GS RTK for the P4 RTK. Yeah, it's very similar to the health management screen on the P4 RTK. Advanced dual control. So that was mentioned a little bit in that video, and I answered a question on this. So either operator can obtain control of the aircraft or payload with a single tap. So all new possibilities for mission strategies, increasing flexibility. So with two controllers, you can certainly have a pilot and a cameraman, or you can actually hand off control to another pilot. So imagine pipeline inspections where you can just leapfrog from one place to the other. And while one guy is doing, 3 towers or, 2-mile section of line, the next guy can drive ahead and then take control and maintain the visual line of sight on the aircraft while enabling very, very long distance flights. So that's kind of cool. And it could be handy for, handing off in different situations, or I can just think of a bunch of different reasons why that's kind of a cool idea. And dual battery, in case one battery fails, you can still return home safely. How far apart can the two controllers be separated? Well, theoretically, 9 miles. Since the aircraft range is 9 miles, as long as the second controller can then see the aircraft, you should be able to hand off control. Now, I haven't tested this yet to see how that actually works, but the range is supposed to be however far the range, assuming there's nothing in between the two, they should be able to communicate over that long distance. So should be able to work at the maximum transmission range. Okay, redundant systems, the 3 propeller emergency landing, we've talked about that already. The extra wide FPV camera gives you better situational awareness. Even if the camera payload's not functioning properly, you still have that new extra wide FPV camera. Probably take a little bit to get used to if you're used to the narrower view on some of the other ones. The ADS-B receiver enhances your airspace safety, gives you the operator real-time information about airplanes and helicopters within about 12 miles. So if you haven't seen that in actual operation before on the Matrice 200 or the Mavic 2 Enterprise, as you're saying they're flying, you get a little notice. There's an aircraft in your vicinity, be cautious. And if you bring up the map, you can actually see where that aircraft is. So it gives you better situational awareness of manned aircraft that are in your area. All right, so we'll get to the advanced intelligence modes here. There are some super cool new features that are going to make life a lot easier for public safety as well as inspection work. So pinpoint, smart track, and location sharing, very cool features that allow you to drop a pin basically on something and have everyone else know where that is via the other remote or via service like Flight Hub. And that data is available via the SDK, so there may be some other uses that will come up along with that. So smart pin and track for pinpoint operations. You can create a pinpoint with the laser rangefinder. So even though you may be back some distance and you want to drop a pin out in front of you, it's using the laser rangefinder for that, so it knows where you're actually dropping that pin. I think I have a video on that. Sure, I do. We'll see how this. Whoops! God dang, my mouse is way too sensitive today. So you can see way off in the distance, dropping a pin. This is a good view of the new heads-up display, looking very much like a fighter aircraft or something with the way that's working. So you see your tilt angles, your airspeed. I'll let this play through a little bit so we can see. There we go, this airspeed on the left, altitude on the right. Your altitude down in the bottom right. So kind of an interesting new display. I kind of like it. And here is smart pin and the tracking. Gosh, why is it bouncing all over the place? Automatically detect and follow objects. And this will definitely remind you of what you see in a high-speed chase from a helicopter. Being able to just, I don't know what is wrong with PowerPoint this morning. There we go. I'm going to get my hands away from it. So select an object, and now it will track it. And if you notice in the top there where it shows the zoom amount, it's zooming in and out to try and keep that object not only centered in the frame, but at the same zoom angle or zoom percentage. So it does a pretty good job. Nothing real exciting here going through, around power pulls and things. It's not, hasn't really lost track at all. So it does a really good job of being able to detect and follow predefined objects, vehicles, people, boats, bicycles, the standard active track objects. Auto zoom keeps the subject centered in the frame for optimal viewing, and the subject position is displayed on the map. So if you saw in the bottom left-hand corner here, it's not only showing the aircraft, but it's showing where the tracked object is. So that can be pretty handy. This would definitely have its uses in public safety. Let's see. What is the bird's top speed? You know what? I'm going to have to look it up. It may be on one of the other slides that we get to. If not, I'll grab it. Can't remember that one right off the top of my head. Okay, location sharing. Collaborative operations, when you're using the pinpoint or smart track, the subject location can shared instantly to the second operator or to ground teams using Flight Hub. Not a video there. So clicking takes me to the next screen. But yeah, this was pretty cool. That, man, PowerPoint is just wigging out today. You can share more of this data of not only where you are, but where the subject is that you've decided to track. When it comes to inspection, there's some really, really cool new things in the inspection category. Waypoint 2.0 gives you some better functionality over waypoints, as well as I mentioned earlier, on the 200 series, it had a maximum of 99 waypoints, and now we have over 65,000 possible waypoints. So much better control over waypoints. Live mission recording, It's much easier to record your mission routes now than it was before. You had to do all this setup work and then save them afterwards. A lot easier to record those mission routes. And the artificial intelligence spot check for improving the accuracy of automated inspections. And we'll get some slides that really talk about these things in more detail. So waypoints 2.0, 65,535 waypoints, supporting bank turns and more dynamic flight routes. And that was kind of a limitation with the previous waypoints with only 99. You couldn't have more smooth turns and things because those ate up the possible waypoints. Point of interest is supported, multiple payloads are supported. You can do multiple consecutive actions, the movement, the rotation, the camera view, all those things you can all do on each waypoint. And it's supported by the third-party payloads and the mobile and onboard software development kits, making it a lot easier to do stuff. Okay, remote ID compliant. Well, who knows? Remote ID as a final isn't available yet, so there's no way to know what the requirement is going to be. And a final implementation of remote ID is probably 3 years out. So it's hard to say that that's even a relevant concern right now. The goal is to make remote ID compliant in a number of different ways, in which case this would probably be compliant simply by the remote controller having internet access and being able to push that information up to whatever server is out there. So it's really hard to say right now what remote ID compliant means, since we only have the initial draft, which was a real nasty mess. And so 3 years from now, when it finally comes out, we'll probably be looking at the Matrice 400. So who knows by then? Hopefully this machine will last a lot of people longer than that. But right now, it's kind of hard to say exactly where we stand on remote ID. Live mission recording. Automatically add new points when you're taking photos or recording videos. So without having to create this mission around it, you can do it live while you're flying. Should make doing repetitive missions a lot easier, because you can just go through one and record everything and then go back and do it again later a lot easier. Before anyone asks how many of these missions can be saved, I don't know. It hasn't been listed on any spec yet, so I'm not sure how much can be done or saved. I would hope that it's a ton, and how you go about saving them, it's really, really hard to know. Again, without having all the equipment in hand and really being able to test this, we're getting most of this material from marketing, not engineering. So there's some data that we just are not going to have for a while. You can do one manual flight and then create waypoint inspection based on that flight. So if I understand that correctly, you don't have to sit and record a mission like we do today on some things. You can just do a manual flight. If it turned out good, you say, okay, well, that's a waypoint mission. AI spot check. This is kind of cool. It can basically analyze a mission once you've executed it and then have it automatically search for that same object of interest for better and more consistent results. So on a power line or something, you can have it learn what the object is that you're really looking for and be able to replicate that all the time. So here, he's drawing a box around that area. It's doing the pictures, and now you can retake that every time that you go there, and it will recognize the objects that you took before. Again, how many of these, what the limitations are, we just don't know yet. There's still a few unknowns out there. High-res grid photo. Now, this one is kind of neat in that you're basically using the wide-angle camera to look at an object and then do a high-res grid photo, which will then use the zoom camera to zoom in and get a series of images. And you can define the area and how many images it wants to take. Well, that's great and all. It's how is this really useful after the fact? And while you will have the images all available, DJI is going to have a high-res grid photo viewer app that as you're looking at the wide angle view, you can tap on it or click on it, however it works, and zoom in to those specific areas. So there will be a specific viewing app to really work well with these high-res grid photos. So this one is kind of neat in terms of an inspection process because you can get up to an object, select it, and just let it go and create this series of higher resolution zoomed in photos. Let's see. I think we have this in action here, defining the area, and then it will take the series of close-up shots. Kind of neat. I think this, for inspection work, this is fantastic. And possibly even in law enforcement, for evidence gathering, for fire departments to, if they're doing a fire analysis afterwards, being able to just very quickly figure out a shot. Oh, useful for search operations, possibly, but the big benefit of this is going to be post-production versus live. So if you're looking at areas and then you're going to analyze that data later, that may be more useful for search operations than live searching. So I get where you're coming from, Brian, but I think this is probably more after flight versus live during the flight. Okay, here's the primary flight display. You can see the differences here that are marked out. You have your wind speed and direction in the bottom left. We've never had this before on a DJI aircraft. This can be super, super handy in a lot of situations. For fire departments, you can see what direction the wind is blowing and how hard it's blowing, so you can help estimate the spread that a fire can go into. Also, from a safety point of view, you can just see, am I getting into an unsafe situation in terms of my speed? And should something go wrong and I lose GPS, the machine is going to drift, which way is it going to go? The wind speed and direction, I think, is a huge, huge improvement. And I'm probably not even beginning to think of all the different applications for that. Gabriel, I don't know the answer to the question. I'm going to do some research on that, and I'm going to double check to see how much of the RTK data is tagged in the images. Right now, I don't have the answer to that. We have our horizontal, dang it. Where'd I go? Horizontal speed indicator, our horizon and flight path vector, which is kind of interesting. Again, something we haven't seen on DJI products before. I think that's pretty handy when especially when you're in a wind situation and you just want to know where am I actually heading. And this is, I want to see how this works on not just the pilot's view, the FPV camera, but if that is actually really functional with the payload cameras. So that's going to be interesting. Your altitude being right on the right-hand side, kind of like that. And there's just more data for the pilot, I think is really cool. And that compass view down in the bottom, instead of just being, kind of this vague representation of where things are, it's actually a compass and showing you the obstacle avoidance. Now, on this image, you see those 4 darker cones coming off of there. That actually is the blind spot of the obstacle avoidance. So while it's really good, it isn't 100%. So you do need to be aware of what those blind spots are, and it visually shows you right there, which I think is extremely handy. Late to the webinar, is the M300 available in both standard GNSS and RTK models? Will the M200 range still carry on or be phased out? Okay, two great questions. There is only one model of the M300. It is the Matrice 300 RTK. There are no non-RTK models. That being said, it does not come with a base station. You can add the DJI DRTK2 base station or use any existing base station that is NTRIP compatible, like some of the Trimble base stations. I know the R10 works with it, or you can use network positioning such as Topcon's TopNet or Trimble VRS. Okay, advanced dual control. We've had some questions on this. I think I've probably answered them all. Single click allows each operator to obtain control of the aircraft or the gimbal. And there's different icons on the screen. So you can see what you can do, who has control, and what you're allowed to do. Do the batteries have to be matched? Always used in pairs. They don't have to be. We always recommend that you use the batteries in set pairs so that they always have the same number of flights on them and they're getting the same wear. You can put in two different batteries as long as the voltage is currently just about the same. But it's always better to use them in pairs so that it's easier to keep track of, know how many flights are in each battery. You don't want a brand new battery with one that's 2 years old. It's just better to use them in pairs. But nothing has indicated to me that that's mandatory. The aircraft control can be locked, so while you can, open it wide open and play tug of war with the aircraft, the primary pilot can lock that so that the remote guy can only take the gimbal control and not hand it off. Typical applications, trainer mode, absolutely. This would be huge for training applications, similar to coach mode that we've had on some other aircraft. And takeoff and landing, taking off from point A, landing at point B, or that handoff on long distance flights. Okay, we got a few more questions here. How does it fly under a bridge? Does it lose GPS? Well, yeah, I mean, if it can't pick up GPS, it can lose GPS, in which case it will usually drop down to the vision positioning system. So, yeah, I mean, there's always a case when you're basically undercover, whether that be indoors or under a bridge. If you lose GPS, it will either use the vision position sensor or it will just go into ADI mode. The vertical obstacle avoidance is great for night operations and mountain flying. I think there's a lot of great uses for the vertical obstacle avoidance. Also, there's people who are flying a lot of things indoors to map big warehouses and things, and so that would be another use case of the top-mounted obstacle avoidance. The TB60 batteries fit an M200? No, they do not. They are way too heavy. If you put two TB60s in an M200, you would far exceed its maximum payload, or its maximum takeoff weight. Did you miss the pricing? No, I haven't discussed pricing. In an emergency, can you take off and fly a short mission on only one battery? No, I do not believe you can. Even on the 200, with one battery, you could power it on to do things like firmware updates, play with the cameras, do bench testing, but you need two batteries to actually take off. All right, extensibility and openness. a lot of you probably aren't too interested in doing software development, but suffice it to say that there's a mobile software development kit, an onboard development kit, and a payload development kit. And what this means for the vast majority of us is options. So some of the payloads that are currently compatible with the 300 include the Wingsland Z15 Spotlight. We usually keep those in stock here. A new 5-lens camera that's coming out. I'm not really sure what that is. That's the first time I've seen this is on this slide. There's different gas detectors that are available. Multispectral sensors. There's, I can't remember which one makes this particular one. There's also slant range, which makes one, and we've used that a few times. The laser-based methane detector, a 50mm thermal imaging sensor, a megaphone. I should be getting some of those in here pretty soon. Spectrum analysis, and a handful of other different payloads that are either on the market right now or will be available. SDK adoption is scaling up. There's 70,000 developers, 20,000 active SDK developers. There's over 1,000 published different applications. Most of those are not going to be public. They're going to be specific for a company or agency that has developed it for their own personal needs. I've seen things like an app that allowed it to an M200 to fly around a parking lot and scan license plates. So there's different things you can do with the software development kit. Some key specs here. Diagonal length is 895mm, weight 6.3 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight is 6 pounds, flight time 55 minutes, descent speed 23 meters a second, maximum service ceiling of 7,000 meters. I do understand that there will be high altitude props coming out. I notice, I see a handful of you guys here are mountain rescue teams, and while it should be fine at the higher altitudes, just like the M200 is today, they did mention high altitude props, which would be nice because then we won't take such a big flight time hit like we do today when we're up in the mountains. The maximum wind resistance, 15 meters a second. The payloads there, Ingress Protection. Operating temperature, minus 20 degrees to 50 degrees. That's Celsius. I forgot to convert that to Fahrenheit before the slide or before presentation here. But there you see the batteries, the station, the RTK aircraft, and the smart controller. And there was a very brief moment in that opening where it showed how the system folds up. It is very reminiscent of how the Mavics fold up, like back arms first, front arms back into a nice tight configuration versus the kind of clunky way the 200 folds up where they just get narrower, but you still have a very long aircraft. So this makes for a more compact design when it's in storage mode, which is pretty cool. There's also sensors on there that will not allow it to take off if the arms are not locked into position. On the 200, you could forget to lock down an arm and you could have a very bad day. And now the 300 with the new design will not let you take off unless everything is locked into place. So right now, our primary focuses on this particular aircraft are going to be public safety and inspection work. Those are going to be the two biggies. When it comes to photogrammetry, the H20 camera it's just not really an ideal camera for photogrammetry. It will work, but there will be better cameras coming out for photogrammetry. So if this is what you're really interested in for mapping, I would say you probably either need to stick to the 200 series for now and just wait out and see what ends up happening with additional cameras for the 300, because that additional flight time is definitely huge when it comes to mapping. But today, as it sits, it's really not quite the right machine. Public safety, Ocean Wildfire, used a 300 during some testing purposes. Very happy with it, did a great job. Team utilized 2 Mavic 2 Enterprise duals for quick rapid assessment, and then followed with the M300 RTK with the Zenmuse H20T. Imagery captured was shared in real time across their teams and their ground teams using Flight Hub. Some of you I've talked to about Flight Hub before, and especially your guys here in Colorado where we've discussed it. You guys are up in the mountains. You don't have internet access. Flight Hub's just not going to work for you because there's no way to transmit the data. So while some of this stuff is awesome features, it's really not going to apply to everybody unless you have a good bandwidth situation to use something like Flight Hub. Valmont has been using it for testing on their inspection for their power lines, really helping them get good data. They really like the high-res grid feature to get that overall structure, and then each subcomponent, 20 megapixel sensor, and the 23 times hybrid optical zoom really is efficient for getting that data quickly and easily. Hot swappable batteries. I mean, they say here it increases your mission times, but I mean, it's not significant. It's not by tens of minutes. If you've ever had to power down an aircraft and turn it back on and reacquire GPS, I mean, you're typically talking a savings of, 20 seconds max, really, per landing. Now, that can definitely add up, over, days and days and days of work, but still, hot swapping those batteries, now you're landing and you're back up in the air in seconds versus tens of seconds. AI spot check for repeatable missions, capturing the same structure over and over. Now there is a maintenance plan that comes with it. So the basic plan is 6 months, the standard plan is 12 months, and premium plan is 18 months. I believe that's 200 hours and 400 hours. Well, you're still getting a little bit more information on these different service plans for them, but it does come with a basic plan included in it. H20 camera sensor size. See if I have that here. It's a 1/2 inch sensor, if I remember right. It's not a 1-inch sensor. I believe it's a 1/2 sensor on the H20. Any word on a gimbal system and software to use a Sony mirrorless camera? No. Those cameras are definitely heavier than the cameras that are on the gimbals. So adding a gimbal and a camera, I mean, you're typically looking at something like a Ronin to handle that kind of weight. So I don't expect to see something that can handle just a third party camera. It just doesn't seem that really feasible. The Enterprise Shield, with the higher end packages, you get unlimited replacements. It's one plan for multiple machines, like overnight or second day delivery for that. So, you don't need to worry necessarily about accidents during flight. This program helps alleviate that. You get the standard plan is 2 product replacements at 0 delivery cost, whether it's accidental damage due to crashing or water damage to the machine. DJI's got you covered with the plan. So if we're going to give you a quote on this stuff, we can definitely go over more of what these things cover and how that works. There's some resources here if you want some of these links. There's some best practices for deploying drones and disaster relief, how drones are used in oil and gas. A lot of this is found on the DJI Enterprise website. It talks about, they've got a bunch of different PDFs and white papers and things that are pretty cool these days. I think that kind of wraps it up for the 300 RTK. I know some of you missed some of the earlier stuff. There's only one model. There's no non-RTK version. There's no base version. It's just 300 RTK. Now, if you invest in this and you don't need the RTK, and 4 months down the road, are they going to come out with just a 300 non-RTK? I don't know. I've asked the question. I was told there's only one model, and that's about it. Okay, yes, everyone's asking me about pricing. So I will say the pricing is pretty darn good. The aircraft combo, unfortunately, I'm on this screen, so I can't see my other screen at the moment. But the aircraft combo is just over, it's right around 11,000, and the camera with the thermal is right around, it's under $10,000 for that. So your typical configuration with the aircraft, a couple sets of batteries, and the camera is going to be in the $25,000 range. So we can definitely narrow that pricing down with you on a quote to make sure that you get good information on that and get it kind of dialed in for your particular needs. Because if you don't need the thermal and you only need the other camera, then that's going to be a lot cheaper than the thermal camera. There is a several $1,000 price difference in those two camera options. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that you might have today is not forward compatible, other than the Z30 camera and the XT2. Those, if you already are using those can be used on the 300, and that's pretty much it. The other cameras don't work because they don't have their own onboard image processor, and the batteries don't go back and forth either. So unfortunately, there's a lot of just brand new here that isn't going to go across or be backwards compatible or forwards compatible. So I hope that answered a lot of your questions. This was quite a bit of material here, a bunch of slides to go over. And if you want us to get together some very specific pricing for you, email us, enterprise@multicopterwarehouse.com, and we'll get you some information on that. You can always go to our website at enterprise.multicopterwarehouse.com. I'll be putting more information and more videos on there to talk more about the product and get some more educational material up there. And there's a contact form on there for additional information as well. If that's it, no more questions, then like I said, feel free to contact us, enterprise@multicopterwarehouse.com, and we'll be happy to get whatever questions you might come up with answered for you, get you a quote, whatever you'd like. I'm very excited about this product. Availability, that was another one, and that is basically immediate. We should be able to get these very, very quickly for people. Let's see, a bunch of questions just came up. Is the controller compatible with third-party software like Pix4D or Drone Deploy? That is going to depend on the third-party software company. There is no reason why they cannot make their software compatible with the smart controller. It's just a matter of them doing it. So that is going to be a question for those particular companies. One slide showed the XT as compatible. Now, so, I'm going to double check on that, because it does have the SD card, but on our training, they did not say that. So Brian, I will get you the information on that. I will double check and see if the original XT, well, it would have to be an XT version 2, not an XT2, but an XT version 2. So if it works on a 200, will it work on a 300? I'll get you that information. So the M300 alone is about 11K. Yes, that does not include a camera. So that is just the cost of the aircraft, the controller, the battery station, the travel case, all the basics to get up and flying, but does not include the cost of a payload. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate you taking your time today. I'll let you guys get back to whatever you're doing, your work, your lunch, your quarantine, whatever it is that you've been up to lately. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to take a few moments out of your day and spend it with me and learn more about this exciting new product. I'm really jazzed about it. I just can't wait to get mine in my hands and start playing around with it so I can answer even more of you guys' questions and help you make the right decision as to whether this is a product to go with, or maybe you should still stick with something like the 200 series. So again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we'll be speaking to, hopefully, a handful of you guys very, very soon.